I'd like to call the May 7th regular board meeting to order. This is the time and the place for the Marshalltown Community School District Board meeting. Welcome to all of you who are in the audience with us, and to those of you who will be with us on delayed broadcast. Allow me to introduce the board members at the table with me. Starting on my right, we have Sean Heitman, Karina Hernandez, Ross Harris. On my left, we have Mike Miller, Ben Fletcher, and Janelle Carter. At the center table with me, to my right, is Paulette Newbold. She is the board secretary. And to my left is Dr. Theron Schutte, the superintendent of schools, and I am B. Niblock. The sheet that is in the audience right now is for any individuals who would like to address the board about an agenda item or during public comments to sign up. You'll be given 5 minutes to present to the board, and according to board policy, we will not be allowed to respond to your comments, but we thank you for them anyway. Would you please read with me the Marshalltown mission? We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills, and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences. And stand as you are able and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any changes in the agenda?
Well, we do. We're going to remove 5.03 flexible funding and bring that back in a different form at the next meeting.
Oh, yes, I have a change of personnel consent. Add under resignation, Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, Galas, G-A-A-L-A-A-S, as a resignation effective today, and that's a third grade position in Fisher Elementary.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Carter Hernandez. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0.
So our first recognition today is our school board, since this is National School Boards Month, and hopefully most of you had the opportunity over the last couple weeks to watch the webinar, which had some interesting statistics. You're one of, or 90,000 school board members nationwide, or collectively you're one of 14,000 school boards. I think there's 1,900 locally elected school board members in the state of Iowa, and it's your positions represent the largest group of elected officials in the country, actually. So I want to personally thank the board for their continued support of our efforts as a district to improve achievement for all students and to position all students for success. I think a lot of times people's view from the outside of the school board is, attending meetings, whether it be bi-monthly or once a month, depending on the community, for a couple hours, and they don't recognize the countless additional hours that school board members put in. I think Karina and I kind of had that conversation once she had gotten onto the board, that I didn't know what I didn't know, in terms of the amount of time that's vested in especially committee work leading up to ultimately what comes before the full board to vote on. So I want to thank you for your efforts, and I have a certificate of appreciation. Sean? This one. This is also Educator Appreciation Week, and keep in mind, educators get a week, school boards get a month.
Not fair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next recognition is the Marshalltown High School 4-H Club. I've been hearing great things about them this year. There was a recent Washington, D.C. trip. There's lots of things going on that this club is doing, so we invited them to speak. You want to start them off, Norma?
All right, well, thank you very much for this opportunity. We are representing the MHS 4-H Club at the Marshalltown High School, and we're going to start by introducing ourselves and what we do at the club. My name is Norma Dorado Robles, and I am one of the leaders for the club.
Hi, my name is Nayeli Nava. Hi, my name is Gabriella Mencius.
Hi, my name is Daisy Lopez.
My name is Jessica Mencius.
My name is Michelle Macias. My name is Grisel Chavez.
Jane Moon.
The document? Yeah.
So we're going to start by just introducing the mission of our club and why we do what we're doing, and Grisel's going to help us with that.
Okay, like I mentioned, my name is Grisel Chavez. I'm a leader.
You give her the
Pass
microphone.
the microphone,
Okay.
one of them.
That one's wireless.
So my name is Grisel Chavez. I'm a 4-H leader. Our mission is to empower youth to reach their full potential by working and learning in partnership with caring adults, and our focus is to get them ready for college.
So we're going to get started with the first one, and so she's going to talk about a little bit of her experience throughout the club in this past year. We've been doing the club for the last 4 years, but what we're going to show you today is the last year.
Well, like I mentioned, my name is Jessica Mencius. I'm a senior, and I have been a part of the 4-H Club since my freshman year. I recently received a scholarship for $1,000 because of the club and the foundation from different people that donate money from the 4-H Club. I had to submit a couple essays, my FAFSA and my FAFSA information, and also a couple of recommendations. And I received one of the scholarships for $1,000.
My name is Gabriella Mencius. I went on. Well, hi again. My name is Nayeli Nava, and I'm a sophomore. One of the opportunities I had is to go to the National 4-H Conference in Washington, D.C. Something that I'm really proud about is that I got to speak to Congressman Steve King and tell him how diversity is a beautiful thing, and also I got to talk to NIFA about health issues and how they can make their program more better for children to look into it and get more information about it. And it was a really good experience, and I'm thankful for 4-H to give me that experience.
And she is also the first Latina from Central Iowa in 4-H to be part of this specific conference. So that is something that we actually like to add into that. And then now I'm going to talk about what's UGMA. Some of them, they couldn't come because it was soccer, but so what we're doing right now, we're doing more of the inclusion part of it, and we're including the Burmese population into our club, and we're doing that by utilizing opportunities statewide throughout within 4-H, which in this case, they're called the Cultural Leadership Youth Accelerators. So we're trying to give them more opportunities to create leaderships within counties around the state. And this is one of the initiatives that we were able to participate for the first time here in Iowa from the county. And now these kids are part of our club as well. Oh, they're not here. Okay, and so then these 3 specific students had the opportunity 2 months ago to be part of the Iowa Extension Council Association legislative date and learn more about the state politics. For the 3 of them, that was the first time that they have done this. So they got a pretty positive and good experiences as they were sharing when they came back from this specific field trip. Some of our focuses have also been college readiness, as we talked in our mission at the beginning. So what we're doing throughout the year, we were hosting workshops, FAFSA, and we were having specialists from the actual Department of Education all the way from Washington, D.C., and they were walking us through several questions that we had from the students and also from the parents that were present. And then again, we continue to talk and how we continue to support diverse communities within the district. And in this case, you see one of our 4-H members, Hetele Paul. She is one of our weekly volunteers for an initiative program that we're doing in a partnership with 4-H and another extension program here in Marshalltown, working with that was my mistake, is not the current church, it is the Chin Church. So.
I am Gabriella Mencius, and I had the chance to go to the health conference held in Washington, D.C., and I got to learn a lot about healthy living. And actually, me and the girls are making a similar retreat held in Madrid, Iowa, just to add that in there. Oh, and I'll be volunteering at the health fair tomorrow.
My name is Daisy Lopez, and thanks to 4-H, I'm also in the Iowa Valley Leadership class this year, and I also get to be a co-leader for the STEM group in Woodbury.
So what she does, she supports the club by being a co-leader, and she assists the actual leaders. So we have a total of 10 kids in that specific club, and it's STEM-based. So all the curriculum is research-based that we show to them, and we're trying to continue to grow those opportunities for this specific group here in the club, and then the leadership skills that they're learning here, how can they pass them along throughout the whole district. And this is one of the opportunities that we've been having to do that. And then I don't have another slide, but she can share a little bit of her experience and how the club has impacted her.
So 4-H, I've been 4-H for about 3 years now. It has helped me and encouraged me to go to college. They're very supporting and they're always there for us. I learn about new opportunities out in the community, and yeah.
Yes. Another thing that is really helpful about 4-H is that myself, I didn't have a lot of communication skills for other people, and 4-H has helped me gain those communication skills, not also just that, but leadership skills and helping around my community and just bringing each other as a team, as a community is really nice also. And I've never experienced myself going through none of these stuff, not going to Washington, D.C. It was my first time going there, and it was a really, really great experience. And I thank Norma and my other leaders for giving me that opportunity and giving me that chance to actually expand my education and maybe keep going further in life for that. So.
And with this, we finalized our presentation, and we're just...
Can you share the total number of students that we have in the club?
Yes, she is one of our leaders as well. So, my bad, thank you. We have a total between 20 to 25 kids in the club, and it is open and inclusive to all youth, but we saw that the necessity that it's been mostly minority populations that have been coming our way, and this is something that we want to continue encouraging the school district to have more of these initiatives to be inclusive to all youth in the district. And this is our way to say this is how we're being inclusive to everybody, and we're going to continue doing this and impacting more youth as we go along. So you're going to continue hearing from us, and them two are leaders as well as Karina, and then we also have 2 members from the high school and 2 other community members being part of this project as well.
Other questions from the board?
Do you guys interact with any of the other 4-H groups in the state? Do you?
Yeah, actually, when I had my trip to Washington, D.C., I met everyone from everywhere, Canada, Puerto Rico, everywhere, North Carolina, South, everything. It was amazing to interact with people that you're not used to interacting with, especially because they're from other parts. And since Puerto Rico had that really bad hurricane, they explained to us a little bit more about how that happened and how they survived through it and stuff like that. And it's really interesting to see how other people live and not just stuck in Iowa with the cold weather and stuff.
I'd say good job to you for talking to Steve King the way you did. Yeah, good job. I bet you, good job.
But county-wise, we continue doing like leadership camps and that kind of stuff to be inclusive to all county 4-Hers and have more activities and interaction with them.
So 2 of you are seniors, is that right? And so what are your plans for next year?
My plans are to attend MCC and then transfer hopefully to DMAC.
And have you identified an area of interest that you want to pursue?
Yes, I want to go into the translating/interpreting program.
Okay, very good.
I am going to Iowa State and majoring in kinesiology to hopefully become a physician assistant.
Okay, outstanding.
You've had a lot of opportunities afforded to you, and thank you for providing opportunities to others in the community and extending the work that you do.
Well, I've got a certificate for 4 of the 5, and then we'll have one for the one that we're missing. So, really, thank you and congratulations. Thank you, all of you, for being great representatives of our school district. Gabriella. Thank you. Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And apologize, we'll get you a certificate soon. I'm glad Mr. Miller said what he did, because I was thinking the same thing. It's a very challenging conversation. I usually have the opportunity every summer to speak with all our legislators, and Washington, D.C. have done so for about 10 years. It means a lot more, quite honestly, to hear from you guys than an old guy like I am speaking on your behalf. So I commend you and encourage you to continue to advocate in positive ways so that you're positioned for success down the road. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, so we have a very special recognition for Mr. Andrew Potter. Would you please stand? So I think this has received some publicity in the last couple weeks, but Bea and myself and Paulette had the opportunity to attend the Iowa School Public Relations Annual Conference, for which Andrew Potter was named Iowa Communicator of the Year for the state of Iowa. So congratulations. Andrew has done a phenomenal job, in my opinion, as one-man show, basically, to help cover all the great things that students and staff do in the district and get the good work out on that. Obviously, we have a lot of work ahead of us, too, to develop a more probably robust communication and marketing plan for our district, but it's been a sincere pleasure to work with Andrew, and
Okay, well, figured.
Well, now you know how we
You
feel.
gotta take like 6, right in a row like he does.
You know, take 10 or 12.
Get going.
There you go. Very proud.
Thank you to Theron for taking the time to nominate me. He wrote a nice letter. Most of it might have been true, I don't know. And Paulette and Bee attended the banquet, and once they showed up at the banquet, I'm like, something's up here. So, because I was supposed to be a surprise, but yes, it was a very nice night, and yeah, it was very touching what he wrote about me. So.
And Kylie Leisure also wrote a really nice letter recommendation on your behalf as well from the community standpoint. So.
Yeah, she did a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Moving to the consent agenda, looking at the minutes for April 16th regular meeting and April 24th special board meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? Any items of note on personnel, Mr. Spargettis, other than the one you added?
Nope.
Looking at the interagency agreements and contracts, we have agreements with Luther College, Youth and Shelter Services, and contracts and agreements for 4 special education students out of the district. Looking at open enrollments, we have 2 in, 2 out, and 3 out from having previously been homeschooled. And please note that there is 1 denial. We have a travel proposal for National History Day. We have 2 students going to Maryland. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Miller Harris, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Mr. Niemeyer, please come forward.
Hi, how are you?
We're good.
I'd like to bring up one thing here that it's a sub for past employees in the custodial ranks. Right now, you guys, the board has agreed to pay $1.70 difference between someone that's worked here for 30 years and you hire a new hire, and they're getting $1.70 more, $1.70 more an hour than the person that's worked here for 30 years, and they're retired. The same thing is, these people are more reliable. If I want someone to help sub in a school, I want someone that has the experience that we need to help in the school. Number 2, they know the areas. You don't have to teach these people. They already know where they're at. They know where the closets are, they know what to do, and they know what to do in situations in the building. If someone gets sick, they know what to do. A sub is not going to have any idea unless they're trained properly, and even if they're trained properly, some of these people are going to freak out when they see vomit or fecal matter, whatever. Because I've been here, we've had subs before that worked about 4 hours in a building, and they walked right out because they weren't going to do that for that amount of pay. And every time you have a new sub come in, you got to train them. These people you don't have to train. They already know what to do. But by paying those people that have worked here so many years, $1.70 an hour less than a person that's going to come in here for $10 an hour, and these other people are making $8.35 an hour. That doesn't make any sense. It's up to you guys change the policy, and that's all I have to say. You guys have a grand evening. I'm going to go home and do some yard work.
Thank you.
Mr. Garcia?
I'm really nervous.
That's fine. Take your time.
If you guys
Would you
don't
use a microphone, please?
If you guys don't remember me, my name is Miguel Garcia, and I still remember when I came here to get myself back into school. I wrote something down.
Go ahead.
And is it okay if I read it to you guys?
You bet.
All right.
Would like to hear it.
When I started school, I was a crazy kid that never followed the rules. I never wanted to do things. My first year, I got in trouble too much. My second year, I was crazy throughout. Thought things were funny to do. Also got kicked out of school for a year and a half. My summer was hell to me. I never thought I would do all the things I have done to get myself locked up. I was locked up for almost a year at Woodward Academy. When I got out, I was almost caught up in school for all the time I was missing. And when I got out to school, I was doing good. My freshman year, I was crazy, did drugs, didn't care about school. My grades were Fs. I really didn't do work at all. I didn't show up for school. I would leave with friends and do drugs. I started getting in trouble. I started to do bad things in school, like cuss out teachers, and I was known for doing that. Also, I tried to throw a trash can at a girl. I didn't. My thoughts on the first day was at the MHS was nice and big, but I was a little bad kid. When I came to the Marshalltown High School, after weeks, I got sent to the office for pushing around, cussing out these teachers and not doing my work. Also, I got OSS and ISS a lot when I got in trouble. I told myself that I wouldn't get myself in trouble, that I wouldn't give up on myself, and none of that. But I got myself in a bad type of group. I thought I was the baddest in the group because I would do things that I would never knew I would do. I got myself in a BD, behavior disorder class, something like that, I think. When they started to see my behavior change, they would let me go out to my normal classes. However, I would skip again and come to school high. I was one of those pothead kids. In my sophomore year, I started fights, skipped more, and also messed around a lot. My first fight was all about a dude being mad and also trash talking about my sister. I got myself kicked out for a week and was sent to Adora. When I skipped school, I didn't care if I got in trouble or not. I would leave with friends and never come back. I would also mess around too much. By messing around, I would cuss at the teachers, talk too much, and make jokes. I would skip a lot, fight, and when I got OSS, I would do drugs. I didn't care about anything. I didn't like school. I didn't want to do anything when I was kicked out of school for a year and a half for fighting a student off campus. In my junior year, my summer was my problem. I would fight more and cause more problems in my life. I would fight others, which would lead me to Adora for a while. When I didn't go to school, I went out with friends and do dumb stuff. I got into fights. When I was getting myself into fights, I didn't care. I got charged, and until one day I found my cousin because of something we had, and that's when I got myself in lockup for almost a year at Woodward Academy. In my senior year, I came back after a week started because I had a school board meeting to enroll back in school. After I got back in school, a board member came and talked to me. I think it was Mr. Miller. I don't remember who.
It was Ross.
Mr. Harris, right?
He was sitting down here at the time, yeah.
And to talk to me that he wanted to see me graduate and walk the stage because he had a son and that would push me to keep trying my best to do better in life. In school time, I'm doing good in class and I'm passing all my classes. I haven't gotten in trouble yet. I had been doing well and I'm getting closer to my future. I've never been happier. I knew I could get myself back because I was a changed student, someone that can do something, someone who can make things better for myself. I was ashamed about my behaviors until this day. If I could go back in time, I would change all of it. I would do better than what I did. For reals, I want to change everything bad I did, but now I can't. I learned it is never a good thing to get yourself in jail because you could mess up your future. If you do mess up, just keep trying, never give up because you can get back on track. I want to thank the school board for giving me another chance to get back to school. You can see me walk the stage on May 27th.
Good job.
Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
Mr. Gasolina, please come and share with us.
Good evening. I'm Eric Gasolina, principal of Marshalltown Learning Academy. Here to give the board an update about the work that's happening at MLA with our non-traditional at-risk learners at the Marshalltown Learning Academy campus. So kind of a huge highlight for us this year and a big game changer for a lot of ways was we believe Marshalltown Learning Academy was the first non-traditional learning environment since these STEM Best grants have been awarded to get a STEM Best grant. So we wrote a STEM Best grant and we were awarded a $25,000 award that we are currently utilizing, and I'll talk more about that really as throughout my presentation. MLA is a non-traditional learning environment, but I think it's important for the board to understand how the work that we do aligns directly to the strategic plan of the district. We are an entity of the district and we're supporting district initiatives in these ways. In terms of student achievement, we are working hard to implement and make these things known to our kids. The Bobcat Ready post-secondary readiness indicators, both on the college ready side and the career ready side. We are engaged in some specialized staff development to support and develop that work. Probably key to that would be two areas of one around some collaborative problem solving, trauma-informed care work. And the academic piece of that would be the STEM Innovator work that 3 of our staff are doing and taking some classes from the University of Iowa specifically to support the STEM grant and STEM innovation work. In terms of communication engagement, MLA has been heavily involved in some business and education partnership work. Number of entities this year we've interacted with. We've had 4 partnership events this year. We've had conversations with representatives of 53 different businesses about creating work-based learning opportunities for students, developing job shadows, internships, and pre-apprentice kinds of opportunities for our students out in the community. Around the broad area of learning environments, MLA is implementing the professional learning communities framework for the process of continuous improvement on our campus. And 2 of our staff members have undergone some specialized training to do some work around the enhanced social, emotional, and behavioral health of the students that we serve. And under the last category, resources, again, mentioning the STEM Best grant that we got, which is bringing some resources to our building, which will help us scale up some of our work around pre-apprenticeships and pre-employment skills as we work to really target what's called the mid-level skills gap that exists in the workforce in Marshalltown and in Iowa. So again, this sort of highlights some of the work that we're doing that's in support of a strategic plan, in support of the STEM Best grant. Talked about the community partnerships. We're implementing some different tools to connect our students' interests to jobs in our community. We've ramped up our communication with Iowa Workforce Development and have now periodic meetings with people from Workforce Development. Workforce Development has been in and led some pre-employment kinds of workshops for groups of kids that we have. These are multi-day workshops that teach kids things around conflict resolution in the workplace, diversity in the workplace, intergenerational issues in the workplace. A lot of our kids, when they go into the workforce, they're 18, 19 years old, but they may be working around somebody who's 55, 60, or 65 years old. You know, what challenges does that present? How can you learn from those people? Why might their work style be different than your work style and your interests? And our kids have learned a lot from that. That particular partnership was just featured in a Iowa Workforce Development newsletter that went statewide. And they had pictures of the class and the certification that our MLA students got. We've been holding numerous private conversations with training professionals around our community, particularly in the utility fields, utility trade fields, and then conversations with some of our partners at MCC. Our younger students at MLA are in the process of doing a personalized learning battery called Own It, which is a series of lessons and then some questions and some survey work and some virtual job shadow to help match our students to dual credit courses. Just before I came up here downstairs, I got all of our grades for dual credit courses this year, and every MLA student that took a dual credit course at MCC that finished the semester passed the classes. So we're really pleased with that. Own It is a tool that we are piloting this year that really gives us information about kids' learning preferences, what modality they like to learn with, what are their recreational personality traits, which helps us with PE. We find that a lot of our kids tend to be more non-competitive than competitive. And how do we structure our PE offerings then to support those kids? What sort of study environment do they like? How do they best express themselves? Their degree of initiative and accountability, their views on leadership and responsibility, and their own expectations for their own educational future, which often play a large role in how much we can push them and what we can lead them to and what we can connect them to. And also then their career ambition and career interests. I've spoken to the board before about our work around personalized elective opportunities for students. We're still doing that and doing a lot of that. We have a couple of different initiatives going on with some robotics right now. And the two young ladies would like to have been here tonight, but they play soccer. So they are with the soccer team in Waukee. Some specialized training and professional development for staff. Talked about STEM Innovator, which I'll mention more of. And all this work, I'm speaking about this from an MLA perspective, but there's a lot of this kinds of work going on in the district. And we're just happy to be a part of that and to help be a driver in our building for that work. So with regards to STEM Innovator, this is a University of Iowa initiative from the University of Iowa College of Engineering. So our teachers are going through a series of classes over the course of a full calendar year. They'll have some summer institute time in Iowa City this summer. But what this does is it helps teachers infuse innovation, invention, and entrepreneurship into our program. And develop the entrepreneurial mindset from some of our kids and to do some innovative thinking and solve some authentic, community-driven, real-world problems. So we have 2 STEM Innovator teams working at MLA right now. One of them is trying to solve some sort of ecology sort of problem. The other group is responding to a need and survey, and they are working to develop some kind of a board game based on a online game, and they are then going to pitch that to the people who own the online game and try to market that. So there's an authentic element to all that work. It gets kids excited about learning, keeps them coming to school. Nicole Critchfield, Bridget Matthews, and John Jenkins in our building are really leading a lot of this work. So that's STEM Innovator. Move to the next slide. Bit of a bird walk here with what we're talking about, but some data around our outcomes. We continue to implement our blended learning model, where some of the learning happens in an online format, and then other pieces of the learning happen under teacher direction and facilitation. My staff continues to get, I think, better and better at this delivery model, and I think our outcomes are showing this. We have a few more students this year than last year, but the 2017 data, 18 data already exceeds our 2016-17 outcomes, and this was a number I pulled from last week. So we have about 25 days of school left, so I think we're going to continue to improve this number. Semester classes completed is a great benchmark for us because it tells us how engaged our kids are with what they're doing and what kind of progress they're making. Semester classes lead to graduation outcomes, so we are definitely trending in the appropriate direction there as far as semester classes are concerned. The work that we're continuing to do for the future is there's a lot of excitement around the STEM grant and the STEM Innovator opportunities and our continued work around personalized extended learning opportunities. I see that work probably continuing. Our STEM grant is also leading us to develop pre-employment pathways, college and career readiness. I have 2 students this year that finished the Welding Career Academy out at MCC that are now looking to transition into the Utility Tech Career Academy. They can hit the Utility Tech Career Academy for 2 pathways. They can walk in and pretty much get apprenticed at Alliant Energy and into that program. We had a student, an MLA grad from about 5 or 6 years ago who took that pathway, who is now a journeyman with Alliant Energy making 6 figures. So through an apprentice program, as a 1-year certificate, and did this apprentice program. He actually came and spoke at a national apprenticeship event in November that we held up at the library, and I think that for the 50 plus people that were there, turned a lot of heads for our kids who were like, okay, I can do that. I can sustain 2 semesters at college and do an apprentice program. With the work of Own It and the other things we're doing, we're also doing a good job of matching students to available experiences, internship opportunities in our community. Continuing to work with build our college and career readiness skills. The soft skills, the universal constructs, are issues that come up when we talk to a lot of training professionals and human resource professionals that we visited with at some of our community partnership events. So we're continuing to try to emphasize some team building, work styles, and diversity sorts of things. A couple weeks ago at staff development, I led staff through a lean manufacturing summit leadership experience, which staff had a lot of fun with, and during the debrief learned a lot with, and we know how we can then apply that learning for our students. We need to continue to enhance our blended learning instructional practices, make sure that we are being efficient, that we're linked to the curriculum, and that we are supporting high outcomes for learning for all kids. From a social and emotional perspective, trauma-informed practices and supports within our building will lead us to better student outcomes. So we need to continue to do work around trauma-informed practices, build those supports and those layers of supports for students who come to us in our building who have those kinds of needs. The last slide really is a series of external links. One is the presentation that has been given at the STEM partnership event. If the board is interested, there's some interesting data around employability and things in there that is leading us and driving a lot of our work. There's a much better description of the STEM Innovator program there at the University of Iowa, which you're certainly ready to look at. A lot of momentum for this work comes from the Future Ready Iowa initiative that is being led at the state, and the goal in 2025 that 70% of all Iowans have post-secondary training that leads them to living wage, high wage jobs in our workforce. Another link around registered apprenticeships. We continue to work with Iowa Workforce Development and match interested kids with registered apprenticeship opportunities in our community. A full description through the International Association of Online Learning around what personalized learning is available there. And then a slide around the work around the social, emotional, behavior, and health services sort of initiative that we're using downstairs is available there as well. So I provided those so if you kind of want some insight into my thinking or things that we're looking at, things that we're studying, those are great places to look.
Questions for Mr. Gasolina?
Good presentation, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the links too. That's nice.
Okay. Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Black?
I heard that. Welcome back.
Welcome. Great to be back.
Is that a clicker? It's in the basket up there.
No. Well, great to be with everybody. This is year 2. I think most of you were here last year, right? So the topic for today for this evening is just to give you an update on measuring the culture of the district. So we've got the first piece is all about the district and the focus on the staff. Second piece is on the school board. So I'll just highlight each one. Make sure I get this right. All right, first of all, let me just give you an overview. Just to remind you, it's an online assessment, confidential and anonymous. We use 88 questions to organize 15 dimensions. The 15 dimensions are really 12, what we might call gas pedals, and 3 needles. So we want to drive 3 needles being engagement, satisfaction, and quality, and the others are research to be able to know what drives what. So 4 areas are assessed. So think about it a little bit like a solar system with the sun moving out to other planets. The core of engagement is the person, the individual who comes in every day and decides what's my attitude and what's my effort. So many things that we talk about that would be the core of a growth mindset. When somebody gets up and says, I'm going to work in that job, I affect more of my feelings than anybody else. But so does the person I report to. So does the team that I work with, and so does my entire organization. So all the questions are focused and measured in those 4 areas. So there's I statements, there's my team statements, there's my manager or supervisor, administrator questions, and then there's the school district. So that's where all the 88 questions are organized. As we think about participation, we always look at 80% as kind of that bar of excellence. So second year in a row that we had over 80% participation, which is terrific. I mean, I come from a world where many times we look at 50 as kind of the high mark. Consistently, 80 is what we've experienced, and the same here. So we know we have great data representative across the board. The way that we look at the dimensions that I referenced earlier is we look at, in this case, time 1, time 2. Time 1 was last year, time 2 is this year. We look for where there's a change of 0.1 or more statistically to hit that threshold, what we would call significant. So we had 10 of the 15 that changed to that level. All went up. 2 that are hard to move that are traditionally at the bottom moved up significantly. Those are the ones that are highlighted, recognition, performance planning, which is really the higher order of goal setting. It's really focused on the future, not on the past. High engagement is driven by when people talk about, I'm a part of planning the future, that I'm a part of, rather than just what happened last year, what happened last year. So you see all the dimensions that we measure. Engagement, inspiration is at the top. One more reference that I'll give, other than the number that participated, is the N of 695. Is on a Likert scale of 1 to 5, the questions are asked from strongly disagree on 1, 2 disagree, 3 undecided, 4 agree, 5 strongly agree. We look for the threshold overall at a dimension level of 4 and above, which would be averaging agree. So that's a strength level. You can see in the current assessment, we have 5 of the 15 that we're at or above that 4.0. Top being engagement, inspiration at 4.22, pride 4.17. You can see all the way down. So these are all dimensions and aspects of a workplace culture that are really the drivers of high engagement, satisfaction, and quality. Questions that you have on any one of the dimensions? The change, what's in it, what it means, the context? All right, let me just make one comment about the context. Engagement, inspiration, and pride, they go together. They're either high, middle, or low together. So yours obviously are high. Continuous improvement is one of the dimensions that we see in strong cultures because they're never satisfied. There is always another bar they're reaching. So it's almost like spring-loaded, where we could do great. Last year you could look at it and go pretty good, and you're not satisfied, and you see 15 items moving up. Innovation, now let me jump ahead. Innovation is the paradigm shift, the best practice, the first ever. It's a level above continuous improvement, which is more incremental. But they typically are going together as well. So there's a tension in a positive way, or a linkage between the two. So you see satisfaction, which has a high overlap with engagement, inspiration, but it's different. Engagement, inspiration says I want to give my all. Satisfaction says I want to do it here. So there's a relationship between the two, but they're not the same. Quality is quality of our work, quality of the team, quality of our environment, which again is one of the keys. You see a 397, very, very close to that threshold level. Talent and fit is focused on, am I in the right role? What's the standard of the people selected in my district? What's the caliber of the people selected around me? You know, is somebody filling a job, or somebody filling a job with one more like our best? Am I excited when I see somebody brought on board, or I feel like I'm going to have to carry someone else's backpack, so to speak, and do their work when I see somebody on board? So 388 is stronger. Traditionally, the world is about a 3.5. It's hard to move it from a 3.5 to almost a 3.9, but that's one of the examples where it went up by 0.11. Hard to move and important to move. Career development is really where people are talking about, is somebody investing in me for the long term? Training development is where someone's investing in my knowledge base and my skill set, as well as the talents, which is the development focus. Relationships is really who I get to work with and how I look forward to working with the people that I'm with, versus I don't look forward to working with the people I'm with. They make your day better, or they make your day worse. It's almost that simple. Recognition is, you know, when I put forth all that effort, is it being recognized? Does it matter? Am I appreciated? In the world, that's last place. That's 15th place. Where that support and equip is at is where the world has recognition. So in most cases, it's not a lost art, it's an art that's never been found. So when you build recognition in meaningful ways, you're lifting up like hydraulics under a workplace culture. A 374 compared to a year ago at a 351 is very significant. That's more than 2 times what is significant in the way that we measure that. Same would be said about performance planning, which I talked about earlier about goal setting. Communication, one of the hardest. In the world, it's one place below, it's in 14th place. In the world, it's 3.5, typically at sea level. 372, moving up from 357, is very good. Hard to do. The most complicated, most diverse theme or dimension that we measure, there's so many aspects of it. It's, you could do it perfect yesterday, and you have to do it perfect again today. It's one of those hygiene items that you can never achieve it, It's constant, continuous. To see it move that much is very significant. Mission consciousness is, are we clear about why we're here? Are we aligned why we're here? It's the things that you talk about that are up there with your mission and your vision. How clear, how inspiring, and how aligned is it? Support and equip is the basics of the person that I report to. Are they here to give me the means for me to do my job? The basics of what we would call a coach. Not a manager, but a person who says, I care about you, I want to invest in you, I want to equip you, I want to support you. So again, overall, that's the snapshot of the district. We have that information down at the building level, but overall, very positive. Questions before?
Can I ask a question before you
Sure.
go on? Every employee in this district sees all of those 88 questions, is that correct?
Correct.
The board has never seen those 88 questions. I would like to see them.
Easy to do. I can leave the report here.
Yeah.
Or either, or you want to distribute it either way.
Yeah, I can send electronically the district report.
Yeah. Any other questions on dimensions? All right, here's our bottom line picture. So if we want to look at kind of so we talk about culture creates climate. Climate, like the thermometer on the wall, has a number. And we can go beyond what it feels like. You know, we can all feel different. Like, I think it's hot, someone thinks it's cold, someone thinks it's warmer, somebody thinks it's cooler. We can just look at the thermometer and say, that's the temperature. And same way when we look at this 3x3 and the upper right number is the temperature of a culture. So that 60.75 is the overall in the entire organization. A year ago was 54.99. So it went up almost 6 percentage points in 1 year. So to give you a context, in the world, that's between 32 and 35. So if you want to know what's normal compared to what is here, compare literally a third to almost double a third. So we look at that one number, and I could look at that from 1,000 miles away, and wouldn't matter the industry, the profession, and say, strong, healthy culture. Does that mean it's perfect? No. Does that mean everybody agrees on everything? No. Does that mean there is an opportunity for improvement? No. But when we think about strength and health of culture, a 61, if you just round it off, is a great place to be and not be satisfied. The highest we've ever measured in any industry, in any profession, is 95. A lot of people would think, well, you work in hospitality and healthcare and technology and financial services and agriculture and public education and government. Anybody want to guess what industry that 95 is? Public education. Darren knows the district I'm talking about. Somebody who we worked with for 10 years. It is just written about last week in the Chicago Tribune. It's where Caterpillar just moved their corporate headquarters, Steerfield, Illinois, north suburb of Chicago. They have 2 buildings that is 100. They happen to be blue ribbon schools. They have the highest percentage of blue ribbon schools in America of any school district. So there's a relationship between the culture and the outcomes. That's the high bar. So, you know, you should be applauded by 61 2 years into measuring it and focusing on it. You know, when people do it over a lot of years, you can see where they can go. So anyway, terrific. I'll just mention one more thing here as we look at this 3x3. All equals 100%, so everybody's represented. Everybody at the apex of satisfaction or the combination of satisfaction and engagement falls into one of those boxes. Somebody in the lower left at 2.31 feels very different than somebody in the upper right. What we always have to be careful of is who did we talk to and what did they say and how did they report how it's like, what it's like. If I talk to somebody in the lower left, it's not uncommon. Somebody will say, well, everybody. Well, we asked 695 people anonymous confidentially 88 questions. That's our context. And we know there are people that legitimately feel as they report in the lower left. But the relationship of 61 compared to 2 is very healthy. I'd like to have 0, but in the rim of the five boxes on the outer side, down the left and across the bottom, in the broad world, that's a third. Just like the number in the upper right, it's a third in the out rim, it's a third in the inner rim, and it's a third in the upper right. So just as a context, compare that to what you have. Very, very different. So you can feel very good about the results. Questions before we move on from this snapshot? All right. Here's at the building department level, 2-year trends. So the red represents this last year, and the red that number at the top represents what would go in that 60.75% box. But this is not the district, this is at the building department level. So you can see your best all the way to your worst on a relative basis. So your worst is about where the world is. Your best is way above.
So say that again, the take buildings and grounds with 32, you're saying that would fall up in the upper right?
That would be the percentage in that department that reports themselves in the upper right. That's 60.75. So that's the average of this next slide. That's how we get that 60.75 is, so what do you look at the middle, 60 and 60. So that's how we, I mean, obviously it accumulates everybody at a person level. Just as the departments, it takes it at the person level to report it. But as I said before, your worst is where the world is normal. Now, you don't want departments that pull you down. You'd like to be able to have departments that are 80 and above, and buildings that are 80 and above. And you'd like to, at some point in time, to have a building that's 100, like the one I reported about at Deerfield, or I could go to Schaumburg or go other places and find that. But 2 years into the journey, and looking at the trends of how many this year are stronger than last year. Look at Franklin. That's a dramatic improvement. Look at district office. That's significant. There's a lot of them there that are significant in the movement from last year to this year.
Brad, when you take 695 overall responses and then you divide them up down to the 15 or so building level, do you find that you have a statistically significant sample at each of these buildings to be able to make a broad characterization like you're trying to do here?
Yeah, when we're above 80, easily. We could almost say that when we're at the 50 level. Now, I showed it earlier, and I didn't show it at the building level, the trend of participation, still over 80. But we had no buildings where it was like 10. Obviously, there was a range like this in terms of participation, but participation was consistently strong or outstanding. Yep. So, that's a nice picture. Next year, it'll be nice to be able to say, when we add the green bars, does it continue to go up? And do we drive that at the overall district level? Again, the district level is the product of this. This is what creates the district level results. Top 5 overall with 695 people. Number 1 question out of 88 is I'm fully engaged in the work I do. Number 2 is I feel great pride in the work I do. Number 3, in my role, I have the opportunity to do things that I both do well, which focuses on skill, and enjoy, which focuses on talent. 53, which is the 4th highest question, I'm committed to the success of my school district. And the 5th one is I'm driven to contribute to the success of Marshalltown Community School District. So out of 695 people, 88 questions, these are the highest 5. We many times call these the billboard items. Put them out on the highway on a billboard, people think, wow, that must be a neat place to work. That must be a place I would want to have my kids, to be guided and supported. So very strong. And you see again the scores on that Likert scale, all well into the 4s. Some almost halfway between an agree, 4, and a strongly agree, which is 5. Hard to do for almost 700 people. You'll also notice they all start with I. So that's typical. What we see is people reporting about themselves, and they're most in control and most positive about themselves. When we go to the other end, we look at the lowest items. So your lowest item is the world's lowest item. I've received meaningful recognition in the past 10 days. That means it's a culture where we have touchdowns with a scoreboard on, not in the dark. In the broad world, if I use that athletic analogy, there's a lot of touchdowns, but no fans, no scoreboard turned on, and to have to do it again and be excited about it. What's noticeable here is 286 to 3.24. Huge, huge improvement in 1 year. Again, I mentioned 0.1 being that threshold is significant. That's a factor of, 4 of what is significant. So a lot has improved on a hard item, the hardest item, to a 3.24. Just track that over the years and see at some point to be able to be a 4, it'll be a strong contributor to a better culture. Second lowest is talking about school district has a genuine concern and interest about me as a person. Improved almost to that 0.1. The third one is I provided personal coaching for my principal or supervisor. It improved by 0.2. This is one in public schools or in schools. I don't need to separate private from public. That many times is not expected. So sometimes we'll look at that in a critical way. But if you ask a lot of the professionals to say, I don't need it. I don't want it. We can't generalize too far. We really need to know the person and if they need it or want it and not assume no one wants it or no one needs it. But in education, that's a unique thing that we see different than business or other worlds we go into. A lot of times they just say, hey, I'm on my own. I got my classroom. I'm okay. If not, I'll call you. I'll tell you, I need help. Again, we don't want to generalize that it's not relevant or not helpful, because it is helpful when you have that relationship and you're providing somebody something that they need. Number 40, or the fourth question here from the bottom, last year was 2.91. In the past 3 months, my principal or supervisor has discussed my successes and progress with me. Huge improvement. And this is, again, tied back to the previous one. If you need coaching or want coaching, I should first ask you. And then I should second ask you, what do you need? Not assume you don't, not assume you do, not assume you like it like everybody else. Another hard question, typically in the bottom 5, is question 65. I feel in on things that are happening in my school district, 3.21 to 3.34. So again, it improved at that statistically significant level. So all of them improved at that level, except for one, which is 0.01 off. But those were the lowest items. We'll call it the lead items, the gravity, where gravity is the heaviest and the hardest, but significant improvement. Questions on the low items? All right. I'm going to skip this so I have time for the next piece, but this is repeated from last year, that once we deliver the information, the key is what you do with it. It's not just interesting information to put in a drawer. It's to be able to listen, get ideas, engage everyone, and what can we do, work on it. The fact that you had 15 dimensions that improved, that is evidence you didn't put it in a drawer and ignore it. And it wasn't just interesting curiosity or a response to what we're curious about. It was we were building accountability in to our leadership, into our culture. That's how we see the improvement. We can go to the next slide. The next piece, again, I'll just summarize this, but another part of the assessment was added to, it's an addendum to the 88 questions, and these were on the following questions, you see them at the top. 695 people responded. The questions, 7 questions across, and I'm just going to highlight the full district. This information, I think, was made available so you see the building level response. But when you take all the buildings together, the school board is committed to quality work and excellence, 3.77, improvement from last year. Number 2, the school board provides the experience and development for me to further my career here, 3.45, improvement from last year. I feel in on things that are happening with school board, 3.35, improved. Number 4, business decisions made are consistent with our mission and core values, 3.43, improved. School board encourages innovation, 3.65, also improved. Second to last, the school board is open and trusting relationships with district employees. That's one of the highest order, most difficult questions, because it requires time and investment. You just don't say it and then somebody feels it. You have to do a lot for it to increase. In our athletic research, we just finished an assessment of about 88,000 questions over a lot of years and looking at what drives great teams. If you want to see somebody that wins a national championship, that's the number one reason why. They figured this out. Same with the school board. Among all of you, if you call yourself a team or you want to be a team, this will be the most important question that you can drive that will create why you say you're a great team. So it's one of the key levers, the key lever of any great team in any profession or industry. Last one that I'll talk about that improved, it's a 3.45. The school board is committed to creating an enjoyable work environment. So a lot of data. This is just a highlight, great progress, neat to see not only the school board and all the items improved, all the items at the district with the staff improved out of the 88 questions and 15 dimensions. So questions that I can help with as we wrap up.
So if you were the CEO of the school district and you had this data, what would be the 3 or 4 things that you'd focus on in the next year?
On this piece?
On either presentation.
Communication and relationships. Those are the 2 pieces. The more people know what's going on and the more you're building the relationships, and they go together. Because when you're communicating, you're building relationships. When you're building relationships, you're communicating. You won't get credit for things you do without communication in a lot of cases. And relationships are the piece where there's a glue where, I go across this item, I could go across all the items that tie to engagement, like recognition and communication and relationships. It's the biggest difference maker. It's where people feel bonded. You can see that in March Madness. You can see that in every sports event where we watch 5 against 5 or whatever number against whatever, and it's the ones that are bonded. There's an energy to that. There's an attraction to that. People want to be a part of an organization that knows where it's going. I would also add mission and vision. And this is back to the communication, where people can feel it, where people can hear it, where people can see it, where you can highlight examples of it. Many times, okay, that makes sense. It's, motherhood, apple pie, it's all good stuff. But people have to see evidence of it or recognition of it. So when they see that living example of it, all of a sudden it's like, oh, that feels real. So again, that goes back to the communication. So I could add a lot of other things, but those would be the key levers. And obviously execution is critical, because when the information is given back and the action plans are developed, people are watching, well, is anything going to happen now? So you get a lot of points for execution. You'll lose a lot of points if you don't.
So what we do is each department, building, et cetera, that has a team works collaboratively to identify what are those 2 or 3 things that they most feel like they want to address in the coming year. Usually at least 2 of the 3 come from some of their lower rated items, and then it could be all 3 do, but oftentimes 2 will come from there and 1 might come from their upper items, but something that they absolutely want to continue to sustain at a high level or improve upon. So Ross mentioned, because it stuck out, the buildings and grounds situation. I think in large part that's a byproduct of 2 things. One is we've had significant turnover in leadership in that position, 3 people in 3 years, and I would question the amount of planning and collaboration that's gone on in order to address those issues. I'd say the same about transportation as well.
Any other questions? Keep up the good work and don't be satisfied.
Thank you.
So is this something we ought to give on future agendas when we have one of these presenting that they talk about, here's the 2 or 3 things that I'm working on to raise my score, or?
Yeah, we can ask them to incorporate into next year's presentations their culture study work.
Because I think if, to Brad's point, if entities feel like we're, to Mike's question, if they feel like we're using the data, and it's not just a one presentation, here's the bar charts, we'll see it next year, but they see it from us, we're seeing the data, we've been talking about this for 3 years, we want data to drive change, and they see, okay, well, we got the data, now we're going to hold you to it, what you going to do, from both the good and the opportunity for improvement, I think it keeps things going.
Yeah, I'm
faster.
sure they would be comfortable incorporating their action planning into their presentation.
Erica?
Hello. I am here tonight to talk to you about two different grants that we have received. The first one was a STEM Scale-Up grant that we received for implementation of pint-sized science at preschool. And that grant will include 4 modules that have kind of exploratory items in it for the students to use. The first one is called Science Sprouts, which serves as an introduction to the STEM fields and scientific investigations. And then we also selected to add Bits and Bots, which is a beginning step for students to learn programming and coding. Mini Meteorologist, which inspires students to measure and understand the weather. And Fascinating Farmers, which brings the world of agriculture to young children. And so with this grant, we'll receive those four modules that I mentioned, which include lesson plans, supplies, materials. The teachers will be provided with professional development, and they'll have access to a website that will help them with additional resources. And then there are also webinars throughout the year that they'll be able to participate in as well. So that's the first one. Do you have any questions? Okay.
There's recommended action. What college was this? Is this through a university or something?
This is actually, it was one of the STEM Scale-Up awards, or one of the grants offered through the STEM Scale-Up program, and this program actually comes from the Science Center of Iowa.
Oh.
The second grant is a PLTW grant provided to us through John Deere. And this grant will be used, it's $10,000, $7,500 for next school year and $2,500 the following. We will be using that grant to implement PLTW launch modules at Linehan, which is kind of right now our gap for that. The fifth grade, the module that we'll use at fifth grade is called Infection Detection. And in that module, students explore transmission of infection, agents of disease, and mechanisms the body uses to stay healthy. And the final design problem is to figure out how an illness might have spread through a school. And so they examine evidence to deduce the agent of infection, the source of the outbreak, and the path of transmission through the school. And the module we plan to implement at sixth grade is called Robotics and Automation. And in that module, students explore the ways robots are used in today's world and their impact on society and the environment. So they will be building and testing mobile robots that can be controlled remotely. And their design problem is to remove hazardous materials from a disaster site. So they design, model, and test a mobile robot that will remove those materials from the disaster site. So, any questions?
Questions?
You need a motion to approve the
I need a
two separate ones?
motion to approve the 2018-19 STEM Scale-Up Awards.
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 7-0. Project Lead the Way.
That was the one I just talked about.
Yeah.
Sorry, I jumped
Okay.
ahead of you. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so we did scale up, so now we need a motion to approve the Project Lead the Way grant for Lenahan Intermediate School.
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Now we're done.
Thank you.
Okay, and everybody's been teasing me that I'm going to be sitting here for an hour tonight. I really don't think it's going to be an hour, I promise.
It's up to you.
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
I'm actually just panning the crowd.
No, you were
so
looking at me.
You're my last one, okay. So the next one you see on there are the world language curriculum and the health and physical education. So we'll start with world language. So April 16th, which was 3 weeks ago, we presented to you information about French and Spanish. Maybe I'm looking at you, Director Miller, because you were asking about other languages. Maybe.
You think I
Maybe
asked too
not.
many questions?
No.
Or maybe it's
Never-
me that thinks that.
Never too many questions. So we're asking for approval to go ahead and purchase materials for the Spanish and French department for high school to the tune of $43,521.80.
Anything changed since you presented 3 weeks ago?
What's that?
Anything changed since you presented 3 weeks ago? No? Okay.
I have a motion to approve the 9-12 world language curriculum request in the amount of $43,521.80.
Move for approval.
Second.
Miller Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. On behalf of the Spanish and French teachers, they'll be very excited. And the next item is also was presented to you at the April 16th board meeting by Dee Bird, and the health and PE teachers were here that night, and they presented information to you about a request to spend $51,871.47 to buy K-12 PE curriculum and health materials for our students.
Questions?
Was that, it was something to do with like drums or, is that?
Yeah, that was one of the PE requests. Mhm.
Yeah, and so I didn't, I asked a question of Dee that night, and that how does the money that they spend have a link to the goals of the student achievement goals of the department? And she listed like what the goals were, and she talked about childhood obesity and all those things, all good things, but I wasn't able to track how those goals related to the money they wanted to spend on like the drums, which I think were one of the big pieces of expenditure. Do you have a good feel for that? Or?
And I can't speak specifically to the drums, but I do know that they do a variety of units, and all of those units are designed to help kids work on being more physically active and have more movement in their day, which the drums would be part of that. And that is a new unit that they're adding to their curriculum at this time, in addition to your standard soccer, basketball type of things where you'd have kids moving. And I think kind of what we read about in Jensen is it's another way to appeal to students' interests that might, be more inclined to be interested in the arts, and you're sneaking in some physical activity at the same time.
I'm not a teacher and I'm not an expert on it, so I'm going to vote for it, right? But I thought that the presentation 3 weeks ago on the language showed very clear linkages between the money that we're going to spend and the outcomes that we want from that money. And I just wasn't able to make the same link. And it could be because I'm not experienced in this, but.
I know that our physical education department does testing, physical testing, similar to what many of us would have had with presidential physical fitness. It isn't that, but it's something similar to that that's been, I think, upgraded based on national standards and that sort of thing.
Right. So
Whether
they
you can
track their
directly
heart.
connect that to playing drums, I don't know the answer to that, but certainly that's one of the things that they do in order to measure fitness.
Would it be interesting to the board to hear maybe a year down the road after they've taught the drum unit to see how it impacted student
Always.
engagement? We can do that.
Absolutely.
I mean, we
could even have a demonstration. I think. I don't know how big these drums are.
The webinar that we watched, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, talked about, the board's need for more data and being more responsible to student achievement and all those sorts of things. And so I think seeing the link between the money and the achievement is an important piece of what we ought to be talking about.
And
It's funny because sometimes we'll get requests from PE department for things like rubber chickens and swim noodles and these other kinds of things. And it took me doing walkthroughs as a principal to be able to say, oh, okay, that's another game they play with, like capture the flag or getting kids whatever it takes to get them moving and think it's fun while they're getting their exercise in this.
Chicken tosses are great.
There you go, exactly. So rubber chickens, drums.
Sounds like it's something you do at the state fair. I got to hike rubber chickens against Tyler Kluver at Franklin.
How was your
I think I was
compared to
pretty.
Tyler Kluver?
You know, I fared well. He had rubber pigs or something he had to check. So.
Okay, fine, it might be up here an hour if we're talking about chickens tonight.
Move for approval.
May I have a motion to approve the K-12 health physical education request in the amount of $51,871.47?
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher Carter, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. 7-0.
Okay. Next item, we've moved into some professional development materials needed for reading, which you've heard us talk plenty here about, raising our reading achievement scores. And so we've been studying and working with the Title I teachers, and Fisher piloted these materials last fall in reading, and we're going to expand their use to K-2 across the district. So you'll see here a request for you to approve materials that teachers will get professional development on next year at Lenahan and the elementaries. The product is called Really Great Reading, and the amount, it's actually two separate invoices because it's different billing buildings, but my mental math here, we're looking at around $65,500. Do you want me to say the two exact amounts? Is that important? No?
It will be
Okay.
in minutes, but I think you can grab that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Questions? May I have a motion to approve the request for professional development and materials for K-2 teachers and 5-6 reading interventionists as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Who was my mover?
Ben.
Fletcher Carter. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 7-0. 3 more to go.
I know, we're just moving right along. And I wanted to add too, those materials are primarily focused on phonics and phonemic awareness, which are two areas that we discovered last year, so that our current literacy program is not as strong as it needs to be. So that will help us in those two areas. And the next thing on the agenda is the K-6 science curriculum. So this is your information that we're presenting tonight about this committee that's been meeting and working through this process this school year. And then I'll come back to you again in 2 weeks and ask for approval of a budget for K-6 science. All right. Am I clicking myself here? Is that what we're doing tonight? Awesome. Okay. And Erica, it was definitely the lead on this K-6 science work and working with me and the committee this year. So I'll go ahead and talk you through some of these slides, and then if there are any specific questions, either Eric and I or I will try to answer them. So similar to other committees you heard about this spring, there was a science advisory committee that met. They met roughly once a month starting last fall. Very diverse group. Exciting to see art teachers, special ed teachers, different teachers than just classroom teachers that wanted to be part of this science advisory committee that met, representing all 6 elementaries and Lenahan. We had a science consultant from Central Rivers AEA who was very helpful in our training and in our meetings. The team ended up looking at 8 different curriculum products or options, resources that were out there. They then narrowed it down in around January, I think, to 4 products that they felt were best aligned to the next generation science standards and would meet our students' needs in terms of knowing that they were appropriate for English language learners, for example. And then those 4 vendors were invited to come in to present. And the committee was able to give feedback on all of the materials that they learned about in order to give a final input into the final decision to purchase. And so after that whole process was put into place in March, the committee landed on mystery science for grades K through 4 and STEM scopes for grades 5 and 6. So I'm excited to share, and maybe I'll give you a little anecdote on this when we're done, but Marshalltown is committing to 30 minutes per day of science instruction which will be a rotating system of science, social studies, and health. And then, depending on the grade level, we're going to make sure that handwriting and keyboarding gets a little bit of time and attention here, which I think you all would agree is something that it's hard for us to get done with all the other demands we have during the school day. But these are all ways that we know kids need, important things they need to learn, and ways that some kids excel. So I'm happy to see that we're getting all of these back into our schedule. Right now, we have 3 STEM specialists you've heard about that go in our special schedule. So every 6 days, they address some of our science standards that we're required to teach through the Project Lead the Way launch, which was our curriculum for last year. And then beginning next year, classroom teachers will teach this new mystery science curriculum, or pieces of it, depending on their grade level, that will finish out the Iowa core standards. So it's kind of like the state gives us a big menu and says, you have to teach, I'm making this up, but these 42 standards in 3rd grade, and maybe the STEM teacher is picking up 19 of them, and the classroom teacher will do the other 23. So it's a joint effort at each grade level to address the state science standards. Some things you might want to know about mystery science. There's highlights listed up there, what the program is known for. And it was very appealing to us because it's a teacher-friendly product, easy to use. There isn't a lot of professional development required on the backside for teachers. It's an online curriculum, interactive videos, visuals, things that really appeal to our kids, but also incorporates some nonfiction reading, and it's built around the phenomenon of science, which is the heavy focus of Next Gen. And excitingly, Central Rivers AEA has a purchasing agreement with Mystery Science right now, so it's free to us for the first 2 years for us to use it. And then we can extend it after those 2 years.
So what's the $5,900 cost?
So it will be, if the AEA chooses not to continue in year, for us it would be 3, 4, 5, and 6 of this science implementation, then our cost to inherit that would be $5,994 per year.
If that happens after the first year.
But if it doesn't, it would be free for the life of the adoption, other than we have consumable, like masking tape, styrofoam balls, like those kinds of things that we have to buy across the district on an annual basis that curriculum just pays for in general.
But this is it's all online, so it's the licensing fee as opposed to buying books.
That's the licensing fee, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Isn't that exciting? I think it is. Sometimes free isn't exciting if it has a catch or it's not that hot of a product, but it was the best choice, according to the majority of the committee, and it was free. And then, of course, it got a little bit interesting at 5th and 6th grade because Mystery Science didn't go up to 6th grade, and we teach science in Spanish in 5th grade, and it's not in Spanish, so there were some reasons why. And it's hard with a building like Lenahan to have your 5th grade teachers doing one curriculum, your 6th grade teachers doing another curriculum, and then they go on to 7th and 8th and have a different curriculum. So that's why STEM Scopes is what 5th and 6th grade landed on, which will be taught and will cover the vast majority of the Iowa science standards for 5th and 6th. And the launch grant will pick up the rest that Erica just talked to you about from the John Deere grant. So those will be blended together to cover all the science standards for our Lenahan kids.
So Lisa, does the 2 STEM scopes and the mystery science replace something that we're using today?
Yeah, do you want to talk about this?
It replaces teacher-created lessons and units that were created as part of our common unit design work. Gosh, I did that,
So
but I
it's
can't
not- it's
remember.
not we're not replacing something we purchased 3 or 4 years ago that we tried, and now we're going to invest in something new.
It's replacing a homemade science system that was put in, that was built off of the FOSS kit idea, which was an expensive system, I think that Marshalltown had done a long, long time ago, and then decided to age out of and create their own units that teachers wrote, and the district supplied resupplied the kits annually as they were used. The problem was we couldn't continue with those kits because they weren't aligned to the new Iowa Next Generation Science Standards, which we've had 4 years to get our K-12 science implementation plan figured out. So last year you worked on secondary, or you approved the secondary science, and then this is our last year, or this year is K-6 because we have to be compliant by this coming fall of the 18-19 school year. And so then you'll see their STEM scopes, the highlights of that program, and it follows the 5E model, and the E's deal with kind of an inquiry-based approach, and I'm going to not remember all of the E's off the top of my head. Explore, expand. Anyway, there's 5 E's. Engage. But they're kind of the processes of being a learner in the science domain. And the cost for 800 students at Lenahan to have these materials for 6 years. Is that correct? 6 years, right? $51,900. And then, again, we have some consumable costs that they just update on a spreadsheet every spring, kind of like how teachers do with office supplies, requisition that material. And
will that all come out of curriculum budget?
Yeah. That'll definitely have to be just a plain curriculum budget expense because there isn't PD associated with those costs, so we can't use a PD budget like we are for some of the other purchases for textbooks. And that is our science approach. And I don't know, Erica, how did I do? Did I get it all?
You did.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right.
So this is something that'll come back to us.
Right.
In 2 weeks for approval.
Right.
So, again, how you would measure the success of this expenditure might be interesting to hear about when you come back for
Right.
the official approval next time.
So May 21st, we'll have the budget up for approval, and then May 22nd, we'll get a purchase order going and get these materials in so we can get them inventoried before the end of the year and out to buildings so that August 21st, we can get training when we have all teachers available. But interestingly enough, we just heard at the state meeting on Friday that the state assessment through Iowa testing programs will have a new science test at 5th, 8th, and 10th grade next year. So it'll be a baseline year for us with this assessment. So it'll be kind of hard to compare how our kids did this year with the old science model to next year. Yeah. But both of these programs have assessments built into them, you know, your regular unit tests, those kinds of things. So yeah, we'll have some, I guess, baseline kind of year 1 data to look at it in the spring next year. And then in year 2, we would have 2 years of the new Iowa assessment science to show.
Mm-hmm. How long does a curriculum usually last? Because, you know, we're constantly changing, and I know that we have a rotating schedule for analysis, but you commented that the old system had been around for a really long time.
How many years was it?
I think we've been teaching from those science units. This is terrible. This was me, but I think it's been 7 or 8 years maybe. Mm-hmm. And previous to that, I mean, we didn't purchase new materials when we started those science units. Mm-hmm. But typical sales is 6 to 7 years of a license, yeah.
Right. Usually sometime within a 6 to 7 year window, at least in my experience, the Department of Education will either change our standards that we have to teach, or they'll change our assessment that measures what we're teaching. And so then it causes people to have to pull people together and figure out how to meet those requirements.
But then once the standards changed, they give you time to change your curriculum. So,
right. So we've had 4 years to work on K-12 science in the state. I think it's been 4.
This might be the 4th.
Yes. I knew they started the secondary first because it causes sometimes changes in graduation requirements and then entrance to the Regents University. So we have to make sure that the secondary gets aligned, and usually the elementary comes along afterwards.
Okay.
But I did have a conversation with a person from the Department of Ed this afternoon, and we were clarifying a question about what sciences our kids need to get admitted to Iowa State because of the change in the next gen standards in lab science. And I was kind of telling her what we're doing here tonight. And she said, oh, can we highlight what Marshalltown is doing next year? Because I'm having a hard time getting some districts in the state to even teach science at all in the elementary schools. Like, they just want to have kids do it for a few weeks here or there. And, you know, we're committing to it being on a rotating schedule with social studies and health. And so that was kind of a neat thing.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, come on out next year after we get this off the ground and get some of the kinks worked out, because I think, given all the other stuff the board has worked on with the strategic action plan, that building up our kids' science and math is just as important as all the other work we're doing, drums, ELA. It's all important. We have to get it all done.
Okay.
So this was information that was, okay. Thanks, Erica. Should have set a timer for myself. Okay, next item, I think Pam's going to come up and join me. Similarly, the state has revamped the social studies standards, and now we are on a marathon, not a sprint, to get those moving. So Pam is our secondary core CPDL, and she's helped lead this social studies team. It's been kind of an interesting year for this group because there's been movement in Des Moines about adding a financial literacy requirement, and that's kind of caused us to take this in two pieces. So you're going to see that we are giving you information tonight about social studies for grades 7 through 12, but it's actually only about 2/3, a half.
It's 4 of the 6th grade levels.
It's 4 of our 6th grade levels that we teach social studies to, because we didn't want to commit to purchases and then have the requirements change, if that makes sense. So you'll see information about grades 7 and 8, and then our plan for U.S. history, government, and just this past week, the unit of financial literacy passed. So they're working on regs, I guess, to go along with that to share with us. And we, kind of like what Janelle said, we have a 4-year timeline that they ask us to follow as a district in order to fully implement these social studies standards. And we started with secondary, kind of like we did with science, and then you'll hear Erica will have a team either next year or the year after that'll start looking at elementary social studies. In the meantime, we'll teach our old social studies content. Social studies is changing. It's not, the state really wants people to understand it's not about memorizing dates and wars and events. It's more about getting kids to think about deeper content when they're in social studies, like looking at sources, asking questions, finding evidence for their conclusions. The social studies team represents not all, but those who volunteered to be on the team, 7 through 12, including all 3 schools. And in 7th grade, students will focus on contemporary global studies, which is a change from geography.
Geography.
They'd been primarily focused on geography in the past. Grade 8 will be U.S. history and civics. And then you see the 6 content areas, and we're trying to figure out how to handle the behavioral sciences, economics, and financial literacy. That's the part we're kind of struggling with at the high school right now, keeping it to 3 credits of social studies to graduate and still get all 6 of these content areas has proved to be pretty challenging. And so the social studies team has some suggestions on how to address that. We just haven't landed on a final answer with all of them yet. So at Miller, there are 3 teachers that teach 7th grade social studies, 3 that teach 8th, and then you see there the courses we offer at the high school and also at MLA. All kids take world history, U.S. history, and U.S. government, and then they can currently pick an elective from those listed there. And we do have AP classes as well as dual credit classes. And so this team has been meeting with Pam since last fall and visited a middle school in Cedar Rapids, to learn about how they use common formative assessments and the curriculum work they've done, how they've used junior achievement. The high school team worked to reach out to other school districts to see how we compare to others that are up and down from us, but similar. And we currently have limited electives for our students at social studies in the social studies department. Was an issue that they learned when they were doing their studies. So after they did their study and work as a committee, then they come forward with some proposed changes. And so you'll see those here. Right, so this is what I was already talking about earlier, is that we still need to review this situation and with how do we address sociology, the behavioral sciences, the economics, and we haven't, the administration hasn't landed on a final decision of how, if we're going to go with what the social studies team has proposed or a compromise of some sort. And the good news is we have a few years to figure this out. I hope it doesn't take that long, but.
Well, and I just want to say, in fairness to the social studies teachers, they had a deadline for their proposals to be met prior to the state releasing their decision about the changes for graduation. They were aware that there was conversation from the state about those, so they had some initial conversations, and then they just kind of said, we need to wait. We need to wait and hear what the guidance of the state or the requirement that the state is going to put forth for the economics and the financial literacy. So you'll see that in their request for materials as well.
So I said earlier they were concerned about the lack of electives, so they're saying here that they'd like to see law and society reinstated, international relations, and comparative religions, and they would like to add in AP human geography and Western civilization. But again, those are all contingent on having the staff to teach those courses, in addition to covering the 3 core that they need to graduate. So the grade levels that get their proposals all done and approved at this point include Miller. And so they've asked at Miller for that 7th and 8th grade to have a classroom set of the hard print textbooks. And then of course kids have online access on their Chromebooks to the digital versions, along with all the supplements that go along with it. And at the high school, they're requesting, again, a classroom set of those printed textbooks for world history, government, and our dual credit psychology. Every kid will also get online access similar to Miller. And then the budget that I'll ask you to approve in 2 weeks is $130,341.37, which again covers 4 out of the 6 grade levels. And then the remaining 2 grade levels, which are the things we still need to solve, well, I guess it'll be considered a split adoption. So I'll come back to you next spring and ask for those last 2 grade levels and the amount that will go along with those 2. We should have a solution at that point for the behavioral science and the financial literacy.
How much do the textbooks make up of the 130,000?
The vast majority, actually the online access is more costly than you might expect. The difference between a print textbook and an online access is not as significant as we hoped. So really the only additional materials besides student resources that they're requesting, there were very small number of the database questions units that can be used by, they want one teacher access, and then every Miller teacher can log into that. I think all but for, do you have the spreadsheet? I don't have the number memorized.
I can have that. I can share the detailed
$2,000
spreadsheet.
is all that's not student materials.
So we've spent all the money to give everybody a Chromebook?
Right.
Why do we need a ton of textbooks?
So here, I think what Pam is saying that maybe didn't come through is that the textbook companies have adjusted their marketing or their sales plan to adjust to still make sales, right? So when we ask for just the digital textbook, they charge us as much, if not more, than just buying the print textbook. And then they say, hey, if you just buy a print textbook, we'll throw in the online access for free. So you can't, you don't save any money by not buying the print textbook.
And we're
But
not-
I'm guessing, I don't have a crystal ball, but down the road, these paper textbook companies are going to dissolve over time. And then maybe we won't be in that situation. But the nice thing about the digital access is, like as maps are updated or events are added or changed, the companies more accurately represent that. But the other thing I think that I underestimated, maybe what you're saying too, Ross, is that we don't have social studies teachers that just teach world history all day long. It's spread out over many people at the high school, and so you need a classroom set for each one of those people, which helps when they want to do professional learning communities because you have multiple people teaching and having similar off periods to plan together. But it also increases our textbook costs in that way because there's not just one set of government books and one set of
And I
world
wanted
history.
to clarify that they did not request a print book for every student. Just a set to have in their classroom.
But yet the psychology text.
It just simply did not come with an online, it came as a paper, but not an online access. The teacher who teaches that class at the high school also teaches that class at the community college. And so he's chosen for both places a text that is an older edition because that makes the cost significantly less because we will be buying what are actually called used textbooks for that dual credit psych, but we're going to know that most of them are going to be like new because they were used one semester by a college student. And we have a vendor that will find those for us. So that when you do see the spreadsheet, when you look at the line for the psychology, that dollar amount would be what they would cost if we bought them brand new from the vendor. And the plan is not to do that, is to go through Follett or a similar company to find them. So the only time you get the access with a college book is when you buy them new, and then you get them for 1 year for the online. So it's just, it doesn't make sense economically to do that.
Are we going to want the online access eventually?
They're not asking for that this time around, so.
It's kind of a once every 6 to 7 years process. So you have to ask now or you're kind of.
And we talked about that. That was a conversation. The history and the government are going to be 7-year licenses. We bid for 7-year licenses for the online access.
Okay.
So we learned every year that you extend out, it just gets, economically it makes more sense. So a 7-year license wasn't much different than a 6-year license, so.
I think it's important to note that Mrs. Wyant has requested, and we're currently seeking applicants for an additional FTE from what they've had in the recent past in social studies. She's repurposing an English position through retirement to the social studies department, which has been somewhat discrepant compared to the other core areas in staffing.
Also, this isn't set in stone, but they are increasing some of their ELL staffing at the high school. We are equitably distributing the ELL teachers, K-12, and so their number will go up, and they have not had support in social studies classes from an ELL teacher in the past. We've focused those co-teaching type or sheltered classes to math and science and English, and now we'll be able, with that additional staff, to help kids in social studies, because you have to pass those 3 classes too to graduate. So that's exciting news for social studies. So I will look, do you want more detailed information on what that 130,000 covers? No? Okay. If you do, no? All right.
Here's one thing I learned. High school books cost, just the cost of a textbook or an online access is more expensive than an elementary book. And I don't think I realized that difference until I started working in this position, and I now talk with people who work at the elementary. I just assumed that every grade level textbooks were $85 to $100 a piece, because that's what they are for high school books.
Thank you. That was social studies. Thanks, Pam. And the last thing that I'm here to talk to you about tonight, which I'm not sure if this has been on the agenda in past years or if it has been. Okay. Well, there you go, because it's kind of a personnel conversation, but you'll get to see it in its full glory here. So our teacher leadership and compensation system had some openings in different categories and areas, and teachers applied for those over the last couple months, and there's applications were reviewed and decisions were made. And so what I'm asking tonight is for approval of these people that are moving into these positions or these recategorized positions. So you'll see the curriculum professional development leaders, and then if you scroll, I'm not even gonna say up or down, just scroll. We have an instructional coach opening at Anson at Miller that we're gonna be interviewing for this week because one of the coaches is retiring and one's going to the AEA, so we have 2 openings. And then you'll see there, each of the 6 elementaries will be identifying a professional learning community lead that will attend training this summer and then work with their building principals to provide leadership as a teacher leader in math is what they're going to be focusing on at K4 next year. And then you see Lenahan has identified a teacher leader in their neighborhoods math, but also obviously some teachers only teach literacy and social studies at Lenahan, so they're focusing on literacy for next year. Looking at Miller, again, Miller has a similar situation. They've identified, and we do still have 5 positions there that have not had formal applications put in for them yet, so I'm hoping to get that wrapped up in the next couple weeks. But I did want to get these out to you because the teachers would like to know if their applications they submitted have been formally approved by the board. And at the high school, Miller had unpaid PLC leads last year informally, and then the high school had paid PLC leads. So we've kind of tiered this implementation in, and you'll see there the 7 groups at the high school that are meeting and who the core or who the PLC leader is for that core area. Janelle and Brad are actually instructional coaches at the high school, but we did not have any non-core teacher applicants to lead those 2 teams, and so they will be taking that duty on as an additional role next year. And that happened, I think, at Woodbury in 4th grade maybe, and at Lenahan in 1 grade too, or in 1 neighborhood. And then at the very bottom, you'll see we had 15 non-core areas. So, D-Bert has been working as a CPDL with all these non-core teams this year, as well as some of our other TLC staff. And they really wanted people to be kind of the point person for their work that they do to answer those PLC questions about, what do we want students to learn in our content area, and how are we going to know when they learned it, and what are we going to do if they haven't learned it? So those district people you'll see there applied and will help lead their peers. Joanna will lead the 8 preschool teachers. Sarah will help with I'm not even sure, I think we'll be up to 15 or 16 Title I teachers, et cetera. And then we did not have any applicants for those 5 positions at the bottom at this time. All of these positions are funded out of our categorical funds that come from TLC.
Questions for Dr.
Oh, sorry, there's one more piece.
Sheltered instruction.
Sheltered instruction, sorry. And when TLC was rolled out 4 or so years ago in Marshalltown, in addition to the CPDLs and coaches, there was a category called model classroom teacher, and those teachers worked closely with the principal and instructional coach, met monthly after school, went through coaching cycles. And it kind of had some diminishing interest in that position. There was some cause for concern that they were being called model teachers, that they had compared to their peers. And so we tried to regroup last winter and think about what would be a better way to approach getting teachers to have people visit their classrooms and help other people in their classrooms. What skills would they want to improve on and help others? And sheltered instruction, I think you've heard a lot about here in Marshalltown, is a framework we use to help our English learners access content. And so the acronym's a little hokey, sorry, SILT, like the rocks, whatever. But it's sheltered and we're full of acronyms in education, I'm sorry about that. sheltered instruction lead teacher. So these people were already in the position when it was called model classroom teacher. Now they just have a new title, but the job is essentially the same. And then we've had some new applicants apply at some of the buildings that weren't fully staffed in SILT. So these teachers teach all day. They're full-time classroom teachers, and this is just an additional stipend that they receive to participate in professional development with their building level instructional coach. And keep going, the last page. And then there's Lenahan's, Silt's, and Miller's, and the high school.
How much additional money does a professional learning PLC teacher make? How much does a SILT teacher make additionally?
I hope I get this right off the top of my head. I want to say it was $1,200. Gosh, good memory. $1,200 if you are a SILT, and what is it?
I think that's what we did.
Yeah.
And so how do you assess, so these PLCs, they go to training, and then they have responsibility to come back and sort of give a download to the school of what they learned, right?
Right.
And so how do we assess whether that is effective in creating a better community of teachers and better student achievement, right, because of it?
So the TLC plan itself has 3 unique goals that align, I think, pretty well with our strategic action plan. And those were written and derived based on like models that the state gave us to pull from. So those are teacher retention. So our teachers choosing to come to Marshalltown and stay here because of the opportunities they have. The second one is student achievement are our scores going up because of this work that's happening. And then the third one is teacher collaboration. Our teachers having opportunities to collaborate with other teachers to get better at what they do. And so we monitor those and submit, whether it's through a pre and post survey or reporting out our Iowa assessment scores, tracking our teacher retention data. So those are 3 pieces of data that I report every June to the state to show how we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are those pieces of data that we could see, like tracked over time? They'll sound like 3 good pieces of data, but it'd be nice to see how are we doing with respect to those, and is this money being spent in the right way?
Correct. I just wanted to answer your question correctly too, Mike. What stipend were you interested in?
Oh, PLC, I thought you said it was 1,200, and SILT something else?
Yep.
1,800? 1,500. Okay.
And typically, those stipends also correlate with extra contract days for staff or either providing professional development or getting professional development.
So the PLC lead's only commitment outside of their contract days is the 3-day training that they're attending this summer. The SILT do have 1 day before school starts, August 17th. And their work happens 8 hours after contract time throughout the school year. So they have 2 extra days.
So you've got 100 or so people on this list?
Yeah, and that's a goal of the state too, is to have at least 15%. 25%. We were at 15, I think, when I came. At least 25% of our staff involved in the teacher leadership and compensation system in some way. And we did not have, we hadn't met that goal prior to.
I think a large reason why was because there were many unfilled model teacher positions. I think it was structured to come close to meeting the goal in good faith, but there were a significant number of models that weren't filled. It didn't appeal to people.
Maybe the July board meeting I could share, because I have to submit the state plan by June 30th, but I do know last year off the top of my head that we exceeded our collaboration goal. Our teacher retention data actually looks pretty good for year 1 and 2. It's when we hit around year 5 that we dip below what I think is acceptable, like 85% retention. And our student achievement data, it was kind of up and down, like I shared with you, like we'd go up in one grade level in reading and go down a little bit in another grade level, and the same with math. So it wasn't a clear trajectory towards the positive across grades 3 through 11 in reading and math.
That's how I remember it as well. And so this is a expenditure of $150,000 to $200,000, if my math is right, additional. And so is it a good expenditure of $150,000 to $200,000? I mean, we should look at this just exactly the way we look at $130,000 worth of social studies expenditure that we just talked about, and so.
Well, I think us focusing on math too at K-6 is important because they have all this new great math stuff that they've now had a year to work with and train. And so my goal is that as they work in these teams, that they're actually now digging in a little deeper and saying, when we did that unit, nobody got it. Like we have to go back and figure out a way to fix that, or that was super easy for the kids. We can go through that a lot faster next year. But those are the conversations I think that haven't happened around math enough. And we are having those conversations about reading, definitely.
I don't mean to be negative to you, but because I know it's hard to determine, what the link between student achievement, but if it's hard for you, it's like doubly hard for me. Right. And so when you come and you say, well, this all sounds like a whole bunch of money, and
Well, that depends on what you are looking at for student achievement too. I would like to believe that there is a correlation between the supports that teachers are receiving through teacher leadership and compensation and the significant jump we had in graduation rate last year. So it'll be interesting to see where we're at this year with that as well. But I want to commend the team, Lisa and her team, for making appropriate adjustments and finding success in encouraging people to take advantage of leadership opportunities that do exist. And these aren't monies just for Marshalltown. Every district across the state has equivalent money in order to spend for this purpose. So obviously we too want to make sure that it's being well spent and moving the needle, and that's exactly what the state is trying to assess as well regarding the $150 million a year they're devoting to this.
So how much of this do we get from the state and how much do we put in ourselves?
It's all state.
It's all state money. Yeah, they're by the goal of 25% by the state.
1.7 million a year.
Okay.
And
1.7?
The vast majority is going to salaries and benefits.
Okay.
Other questions? I have a motion to approve the 2018-19 TLC positions as presented.
So moved. Second.
Carter Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries 7-0.
As those last open slots get filled in, hopefully over the next few weeks, do you want those brought to the board too, or can they be embedded in the personnel?
They can be embedded in
the
personnel as long as the whole list with the open positions has been approved.
Okay, thank you.
We need a break? Okay. Paulette, bus bids.
In front of you, you have a bid tabulation summary. We received bids from 3 different bus vendors, and the bid that Chuck and Kevin, the lead mechanic, I believe, reviewed the bids together, and they are recommending that we go with the Hoagland Bus Company with the gas buses. So 2 65-passenger gas buses and 1 77-passenger gas bus for a total of $237,171.
Questions for Paulette? I have a motion to approve bus bids from Hoagland Bus Company for 3 buses in the amount of $237,171.
Second.
Harris Fletcher, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 7-0. Public hearing, Paulette.
We need to set the date for a public hearing to happen 2 weeks from tonight, and this is in order to amend the current year budget, the fiscal 18 budget. And the reason that we're going to amend that is because in December, the district refinanced some revenue bonds that were issued back in 2011. And at the time the budget was done a year ago, of course, you didn't know that you were going to do that. So what we have done is added about $5.5 million to that line, that functional line in the certified budget to accommodate that refinancing.
Questions for Paulette?
So the 5.5 million is just, I have to pay off the old bonds with the
Correct.
proceeds of the new bonds, so I can benefit from the lower interest rate of the new bonds?
Yes. And by doing that, you saved about $290,000 in interest.
That was on this current year's budget, not the one we approved for next year. Right.
Yeah, the sale of that closed on December 11th, I think, in 2017.
Other questions? May I have a motion to set a public hearing on the budget amendment for 5 PM on Monday, May 21st, 2018, and to publish the estimate in compliance with Iowa code?
So moved.
Fletcher Harris, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0. 503 has been tabled to a future meeting. So moving on to board policies. If you look at 504.31R, which is a new number of 507.2R, you'll see that the title is changed, as well as the additions given to us by Stacy are listed in yellow. Those are the same changes that we talked about last meeting. Are there any further questions about this policy? May I have a motion to amend and waive the second reading?
So moved.
Second.
Heitman Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0.
The next two are directly related to the one B reviewed, life-threatening allergies, 504.33, which will now become 507.12, and life-threatening allergies regulation, which was 504.33R, now will become 507.12R. There were, Stacy and Tua Crawford reviewed those. There were no recommended changes on either of those, other than the number.
So those two will be marked as reviewed.
Yes.
And so now we're on to 505.4 or 505.7, commencement.
We made a slight adjustment on that. Instead of just strictly saying diplomas, we indicated final progress report or diploma certifying the student's completion of high school to coincide with IASB.
Questions?
Sorry, what is a final progress report?
Report card.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Should it read a final progress report or diploma? That's fairly picky.
Yeah, we can throw an A in there to be grammatically correct.
Any other questions, comments? That will need to come back. 5056.
Yeah, 5056, which will hereafter be known as 503.3. We did not have a policy on fines, fees, and charges. So we're adopting IASB language and incorporating educational materials into that because they're linked, and IASB didn't have a policy titled such.
Questions? That one will need to come back as well. 505.7.
505.7R will now be 503.3R, student fee waiver and reduction procedure. We added a couple existing policies together for that because I think they were broken out to create that regulation. And then I'll also talk about 505.7E for exhibit, that is now 503.3E, standard fee waiver application. We took IASB's application and compared it to what we've been using, particularly through food service in terms of distributing, and basically combined them so that we made sure that what we were using was what was being recommended. So both of those will need to come back.
And 505.7 are deleted?
Yeah, because we're incorporating that into the others.
Well, really, isn't it 505.7 that gets deleted?
Yes.
Or- Yeah, because it goes into 505.7R.
Yeah, and actually.
And it becomes 503.3R.
Correct.
505.7R is the one that is totally crossed out, so it's being deleted.
Correct.
Correct.
And 505.7, what currently existed as fee waiver would be deleted. Because that was incorporated, I think.
It's a little confusing, yeah.
It is confusing, but we need to bring those two back.
Right. So we have two on the fee waiver and the fee waiver application coming back.
Right. .5 is a new policy. It's just kind of a general policy relative to how we currently handle student fundraising, and I vetted that with the principals to make sure that the IASB policy mirrored what our current practices, and they indicated that it did. And the 704.6.
Wait, sorry, before we move on from fundraising, this one didn't make a ton of sense to me.
Okay.
Students may raise funds for school and non-school sponsored events. The second sentence said fundraising by students for events other than school-sponsored events is not allowed. So the first line says school-sponsored or non-school sponsored, and the other sentence
so that
says.
should have been, that second line should have been deleted.
Okay.
So we'll need to do a. And that was what led to questioning. I knew that wasn't our practice, so yeah, that should have been stricken out of there. 704.6 is also tied in with this, but it's more about staff seeking funds, particularly with crowdfunding. And I, a couple years ago, drafted a model policy, which is what we're looking at adopting to help provide guidance. Basically, we're wanting these to be vetted by the district before individuals acting on behalf of the district, particularly teachers or principals, choose to throw things out there to the public about raising funds. We want to make sure that, first of all, they've gone through the appropriate steps to see whether funding exists for these things, which in my past history, not here, we found that oftentimes they would jump right to this crowdsourcing rather than go to curriculum or professional development or whoever technology to seek funding. The other thing is oftentimes technology does in some way, shape, or form become part of these requests. We want to make sure that whatever is being requested can be supported through our technology department, or that it's absolutely clear if it can't be, that that's the case with the employee.
There's also an issue of individual teachers doing crowdfunding or online funding to purchase items for their department or their classroom that every other department and classroom in the district doesn't have. So then we create that unequal playing field for.
So my question on this one says that they have to seek prior approval from the building principal and director of instruction, not the school board, which is fine. But then the last sentence in that same paragraph says that the money can only be used in accordance with the terms for which they were given as agreed to by the board. So.
Which is it?
I don't think we need to be involved in deciding whether or not they can do it, but then that reads that you can only use the money the way the board says you can, but the board was never involved in the decision to go ahead and do it. So if the principal or director of instruction is giving them the okay to do it, shouldn't they be the ones that are signing off on how the money's going to be used, and that doesn't need to come in front of a board?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Because generally, these are pretty small scale requests, and
so does that need to be
the type of thing that you would see other than through a bill or something? You know?
But
Do we need to reword that? Or
yeah, we'll take a look at that.
do we have another policy that says fundraising needs to come through the board?
We do.
So that might be the hitch. There's a policy that says fundraising money needs to be approved by the board. So if that's the case, we're back to that same problem on this.
So something like the Booster Club doesn't apply because that's not a school.
Right.
Well,
It probably just needs to be reworded in here so
Yeah,
it's
and
a
I
little bit
don't,
more
I mean, we
clear.
haven't had other things come before the board, like, you know, if Lenahan decides to do a fundraiser for the leukemia, Juvenile Leukemia Association or something.
We haven't, but then, because we do have that policy, that's a breach of board policy, so we need to change the policy.
Right.
Not just say, oh, yeah, well, we haven't done it in the past, so it's okay.
Well,
Yeah, I don't.
this could
disagree
come
with that.
to the board with the approval of the committee or whatever, the principal who approved it, and then get the approval, but it still has to follow the original policy.
And generally,
Whichever one that is.
generally, with these things, the principal isn't aware of it either, because people tend to just do this on their own. Yeah.
So in bringing those back, do you want to also look up the other board policy and
Yep.
bring them all so that they're,
We'll do that.
well, ladies and gentlemen, did you watch the webinar?
Yes.
Over to you.
Yeah, so I threw out just a question about maybe picking out one or two things that stuck out to you relative to that. I thought it was really well done. I wasn't
I liked it.
100% sure how it was going to be. It's sponsored by a company that does work similar to Board Docs, so, but was there anything that stuck out in particular?
I kind of like the part when he said that the view of the board is more of a bottom-up view than a top-down view. And he described it as there isn't a board, you don't have a board position without students, parents, teachers, staff, administration. So really, the board is more of a supportive organization rather than than maybe the boss, as sometimes people feel.
Yeah, I thought that was the idea of his inverted
Pyramid, yeah.
Really, yeah, that's stuck in my head.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
I thought it was neat how they talked about how they reach out to new parents in the district and inform them of things from day one and the toddlers and trying to get parents involved as early as possible. And
It's like Success by 6 or something.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
some United Way program.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of like what Micah does a little bit, but yeah. Send information out to new parents immediately.
Do you have you don't have the,
Did you want to watch it again?
no, I just wanted to refer to a specific page in the document.
Oh, he has it right here.
I thought it was interesting when they talked about the, traditional school boards versus today's school boards and how those have changed, and where the emphasis was, the desired state is to move away from just handling managerial things and have it be more of a learning and discussing and collaborative board. And then I think they also made reference to board superintendent relationships and how those evolved from the way that they used to be, which is again kind of just rubber stamping what the administration has recommended versus having collaborative discussions, being involved as this board is in the committee meetings that then ultimately wind up helping drive the recommendations and that sort of thing. And I think when either the boards or superintendents don't recognize that transitioning that's happened over the last 20 years or so, that's where sometimes things get rubbed the wrong way and the relationship, suffers as a result of that.
Yeah, I liked what he had to say about committees.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
And the idea that they can get a lot of their work done in committees, report out to the full board, and then a lot of their items don't take that much discussion at board meetings because they've taken care of in committees. And I think we're heading that direction. I think we've done more, or at least I think I've seen more committee stuff this year than last year. But it looks like they do even more, maybe.
I think he had some good ideas about celebrating successes, and I think, Andrew does a nice job of that, but there were some additional good ideas about celebrating successes.
And then thus the connection of that celebration to accountability too.
The page that I wanted to refer to was page 6, which is the definition of the standards for highly effective boards and the things that he included in those things. And his first was to commit to a vision of high expectations for student achievement. That's our first goal. Student achievement is our first goal. It's the head's first goal. Data savvy, align and sustain resources to meet district goals, lead as a united team with the superintendent, take part in team development and training. All of those things are in our goals for ourselves. Training, team development was part of one of our goals as well. I think that we should commend ourselves for the things that we are doing well at this particular point.
Yeah, a lot of the things that were recommended for high-functioning boards, the board either has been or will be beginning to do. Talked about self-assessment, they talked about involving students on the school board.
The book studies.
Book studies.
wasn't sure about his longevity recommendations.
Longevity was, but,
I'm not sure 30 years was like a long
20
time.
years,
well, that's up to the community
You gotta
to.
make it to 30 years old first.
Yeah, that's, that's an interesting thing because whether it be superintendent turnover or significant turnover within the board, sometimes you have to step back before you move forward in terms of bringing people up to speed and stuff. And, I think that there's been significant increased turnover on both accounts ever since the legislation occurred that changed how board elections take place. That used to be every year, and you'd have the potential of a couple people off a board moving on any given year. Now you're guaranteed every 4 years to have a majority up for reelection, and because the terms are 4 years long, sometimes people don't even finish out the 4 that they have because of circumstances. It could be job relocation or other things. And so, I think there's been a lot of transitioning and turnover ever since that happened. It'll be interesting to know once we're further out if that continues. But as you guys know, 4 years is a big commitment. If you look at it in 3-year chunks, I think people are oftentimes willing to do 6, 2 chunks of 3. 4 years, I've seen more people do a term and then be ready to be done with it. So, time will tell as far as that goes. And of course, the decision was, I think, made on the pretense of saving dollars as far as the election expenses were concerned back when it was made. But just like we talked about with building and grounds, if you have a constant churn on either side, it's going to lead to not progressing probably as fast as you otherwise would.
Other comments?
You mentioned student achievement, data savvy, and I wanted to point out that I think we have a ways to go here, but I want to give an attaboy to Eric Gasolina today, because so many of the school presentations that we hear every meeting don't have a lot of information in them about student achievement. And he had one slide, and it was pretty high level, but he talked about the number of semester classes that had been passed from year to year. And so I think that's an attaboy that's moving in the right direction. That's the kind of data I think we want to see and measure ourselves against.
I think that we can make requests like that to Dr. Schutte to share with principals about what we would like to see in school reports next year, so you can be thinking about that. We can let him know. Other comments? Mr. Potter?
Oh, nothing to report, other than you got back on schedule somehow, which was...
Oh, Lisa. Oh, Lisa.
It was awesome.
We were a half hour behind, and then on schedule.
So I won't think of any more.
Goody. Any legislative update?
Well, the closed session and unfortunately did not take up extending save, so that I'm sure will be on the top of the heap again next year to consider. I was disappointed that that didn't happen, given both sides said that that was a priority to try to get through. I think a lot of people thought at the end somehow it was going to get drawn in with the tax breaks and all of that, but obviously it didn't materialize. So.
What did they finally decide on the backfill, and how does that impact us?
They put it off a year.
Can?
Didn't pass anything.
They didn't pass anything, but they kicked the can down the road, so that means it's coming back at us next year. So then what do we do? Do we plan for that, or how do we do that? I'm looking at Paulette. This is a finance issue.
Well, our certified budget for next year did not include any of those because your certified budget is done on current law.
But now we're going to go ahead and do a certified budget for the following year, knowing what we know today, so.
Well, it depends on what current law is at the time.
We don't, even if they phase it out, we don't know how they'll phase it out.
Right.
Our next board meeting is the 21st, and before that time, there's a retirement tea on the 16th at 4:30, if you are so inclined to offer your congratulations to those retiring.
Lisa, did you have a committee question?
Yes. Is now a good time to ask?
When we get to committee reports, maybe?
Oh, I thought we were there, sorry.
Not quite.
Okay.
Next policy round is Karina's. Please notice, Mr. Miller, that she has more than 2.
Lucky you, Karina. Remember when we were talking about the new boards moving towards data and student achievement and away from the administrative burden? Remember that was the best practice we just saw? Remember?
Yeah. That's why you spread the love with those policies.
Now we're to committee reports. Do you have a question?
Yes, okay. So we have this handy dandy 17-18 committee document. And last fall, after Karina was elected, all the places got signed up on here. And the ones that I particularly know about are the Law Leadership Team, which Janelle and Ben serve on, and then the SIAC, which is meeting again in a couple weeks, which is Ben and Karina. But then last year, Kendall and Mike, I believe, and then this year, Mike, have been attending the teacher quality meetings, which are 3 times a year, but they're not listed on here as a board committee responsibility. And then I was a little unsure, because I know you all get the email when it goes out that there will be a TQ meeting held. So I was just unsure as to, had people been assigned to that duty in the past? And if so, does this need to reflect that, or is it just,
Is it part of someone?
if somebody comes, they come? And if so, Mike, thank you, because if that's the case, you didn't need to be coming this year, but.
My attendance hasn't been
Well,
super
I
great,
didn't
but
want to point that out.
appreciate you saying that.
He maybe has missed more than he came to, but we do have one tomorrow that I think you said you were going to come to.
So is your question that you want individuals assigned?
I don't believe we need to we just looked this up this morning. I think it's only, refresh my memory, what we landed on Paulette about.
Equal representation for teachers and administrators, and the board appoints the administrators.
Okay, so we don't need to have board representation on teacher quality, which is probably why it's not listed here, but I do need the board to approve
Which we've
the
done.
members of the teacher.
Which we have done, right?
We have.
I thought you only approved the SIAC.
Oh, maybe that's what
Sorry, I
it
can't
was.
remember approving.
So.
Well, it wasn't listed the past 2 years on
The
that
board
list.
is to do what?
We're just wondering if there's a desire to have a designated board rep attend those teacher quality meetings. In the recent past, Kendall and Mike were on that committee, or came to a meeting or so. But it seemed odd that it wasn't on that master.
So that's part one of the question, and then part two is, do we want to then, at the next board meeting, have you approve the people that served on it this year? Or just catch up in the fall?
Next year.
Catch up next year? Okay, so catch up next year, and then no board representation at teacher quality meetings moving forward, because they haven't been coming.
Do we do this list annually, or was it just every time there's somebody new?
We do it.
We do it annually because some individuals have requested changes, kind of like in the webinar thing that we
Yeah,
watched.
that was one thing they said in there, was it's a good idea to switch them around.
Get a different experience.
We can't tend to
Have
say
a
the same.
recommendation? Do you think we should have board reps?
I don't think it's necessary. We have a balance of 9 or 10 teachers and 9 or 10 administrators. So I think we need the spirit of the design of the teacher quality committee. But by all means, if the board would like to be active on it.
Yeah, I can't imagine that anybody on the board would like to attend one more meeting, but
I was
If
planning on
anybody-
it tomorrow, but if I don't have to, I have it in my calendar.
Yeah, we meet roughly 3 times a year, and we just review the allocation and budget and.
Let's bring that into the discussion when we bring up next fall, the recycling of committees, because last fall, we combined some committees and
Okay. So Karina and Mike, if you'd like to come tomorrow, you're more than welcome. If not.
Anthony, LMC?
Yes. We've had 2 LMC meetings since our last board meeting. One was for the Buildings and Grounds group. And we covered topics such as summer staffing, just an update on where they were at with filling those positions. There was a brief mention of the new sub-wages. There was a discussion about bleachers at Lenahan. I gave a very quick update on bargaining, and then Chuck discussed ordering supplies monthly versus yearly. And then with our teacher group, that might have been the shortest one in history. Paulette and I ended up being the only ones from central office admin that were there. Some of the things that were on the agenda that maybe didn't get talked about just because of who was there and who was not, that there was behavior issues. Teachers have put it on the agenda that they are wondering what a long-term plan is for addressing some of those. There was talk about Oktoberfest and homecoming, and then we just had some updates on some other very minor items.
Any other committees that have met?
Lau met this last week, 2 weeks ago.
Last week.
Wednesday last week. I mean, I'd say the last 3 meetings kind of built on each other, just more kind of additional and sorted differently on the data. This time was focused on kind of classifying the numbers of students, or I guess placing the numbers of students in different classifications, whether they're newcomers to our district, newcomers to the country, new English learners, long-time English learners, and then seeing kind of where how long numbers of students have been in those different classifications, and then how long and if they're testing out. So I think some of the previous meetings had raised questions of, okay, this number of students are testing out, this number of students are improving, this number of students are not necessarily improving, and some questions were raised on, well, who are those students? Are they coming to our district new? Are they coming to our country new? Have they been with us for a long time? And I think what we found is most of the students in the program have been in the program in at least Iowa, if not Marshalltown, for most of the time.
It was kind of interesting to me because it was an exercise in categorizing the students based on their backgrounds, aligning the ELPA score with the funding period. So it was a little bit of an exercise in how well are we doing and how our achievement is relating to the time that we're spending and how we're categorizing. That's kind of what I got out of it.
Right, so all of the data was designed to lead people to see the possible conclusion that we are not a land of newcomers, so to speak. We are experiencing, in the fall, our count, which was 1,900 kids, almost every grade level, I'd say 80 plus 90% of our kids have been with us for 5 years. And they still are not yet proficient enough in listening and speaking and reading and writing to score high enough on the ELPA 21 that they can get ELA services. So that kind of, I think, was getting people to think about how can we use the staff we have to meet those students' needs, because they're considered long-term learners at that point. They're not, what you see on TV, like brand new kids that need to be taught how to ask, how do I go to the bathroom? Or where is the bathroom? So I think people walked away with that mindset of how do we.
Yeah, we were a little bit down the weeds in the beginning, trying to sort out those categories, but I think everybody kind of stepped back to see what was happening. But
Oh, the immigrant, refugee.
yeah, yeah, but there was a lot of discussion, and I was at the Linehan group, and there was a lot of discussion at our table as to like who these kids were, and then trying to group them into, so that, I think, so that you can instruct them based on their backgrounds, if they're new immigrants versus they're long-term learners or whatever, so. But then you have that long-term learner who's been in and out of the country or state or whatever, and moved around, and so then you sort of have a different situation. So they were trying to explain some of the problems or lack of achievement. It was interesting. I missed the last meeting, so I had to do a little catch-up.
When any of you at central office have meetings that involve board members, would you ask Vicki or Gabby or whomever to put that on the board calendar?
Yeah, it's on there. It was on there. Oh, okay. I thought you meant that it wasn't on there.
Was it on there?
Yeah.
I thought Rachel did that.
But that's a good reminder.
That's a good reminder to include those at the next board meeting. And individuals who are on their committees, like your finance committee or facilities committee, or any of the committees that have board members on them, people who are on them know, so we know that just because it's on the board calendar doesn't mean that we all have to go. But it's a good reminder then when we do the committee reports to look at the last 2 weeks and see what's happened since the last, so that we can be sure and get those reports.
Yeah.
And we've got
We're doing pretty well.
Finance Committee tomorrow, and we've got two facilities meetings between meeting with TSP to further discuss the long-range facilities plan, and also our monthly executive meeting for the roundhouses on Thursday. Also.
Yeah.
So if those just get on the calendar.
Yeah, and I mean, and the other thing is, a lot of times there's only 2 board members at those committee meetings. So if you're really interested and have a question, you can always check in to see if you want to come to be the 3rd board member, as long as there's not 4 of us.
Right.
So there's a finance meeting tomorrow, there's 2 of us going. I believe Sean's going, so.
Yeah, and one way that can, of course, it's been with transition between Gabby and Vicki, but if you include either one of them on the calendar invites for those meetings, that will help trigger them to make sure they get it on that calendar as well.
What have we done this evening to improve education for the students in our district?
We approved tons of money for
Lots of curriculum.
Spent a lot of money.
My favorite part of this meeting was the commentary at the beginning with the young gentleman that came back to the high school after expulsion and the success that he had. That was a win for us. I think most of us remember that. It was one of the very first expulsions we did as a new board.
Janelle, can I add to that? With the student that came back to talk, I think the one thing that was kind of hidden in the background was one of his special education teachers, who's been working pretty much exclusively with him this year. She was hiding in the back and didn't want to come to the front, but I don't want us to leave out the work that some of our teachers do to help kids make these achievements.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
And I forwarded to all of you an email from MLA about a success story there from an individual that we sent to MLA. And that one's working out very well. So it's always good to hear those things.
I found the changing face of 4-H interesting.
Yes.
That's a very different looking group than when I went to school.
Yeah.
And interesting. how it's changed.
And doing very different things.
A lot less livestock.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything about that.
Nobody mentioned cattle or hogs or sheep.
None of that.
Indeed.
I would like to point out too that Ross, like the fact that student identified you, it kind of circles us back to what we heard from Manny Scott when he was here, that one, the power of one, how one person in the community can make a difference, how one adult, one teacher. I mean, you never know, but that one pat on the back or you could do it is going to do for a student a year later. In his case, I guess it's been a few years, right? He's figured out what he should be doing, so.
3, yeah.
Thanks.
My quote for this evening comes from Marion Wright Edelman, and she is the woman who read the poem with the short 3-minute video that I showed a few weeks ago. She's the director of the National Children's Defense Fund, which works with families and children in poverty and with world hunger. Her quote is this: "Education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and world better than you found it." May that be what we all hear at the end of this school year, graduation, and so on. May I have a motion? Let's take a break. De-water water, and then we will move into closed session for Dr. Schuette's evaluation.